He's the one that leads us. But my pastor is my platoon leader. And I look to my platoon leader, and he guides me. That's why I come to church. I want my platoon leader to speak to me because he knows how to disperse the squads. He knows how to disperse all the weapons. And when we're in our warfare, then we can fight the battle as we have been trained to fight. We need to train ourselves. But not only that, see, here's the thing. It says, for we have not a high priest which cannot be touched with the feelings of our infirmities, but in all points tempted as like we are. But here's the key, without sin. So look to him. You know, what way we want to handle it. Well, I can handle this, and here's the way it is. When all else fails, then we try Jesus. We need to go to him first. We need to try it. We need to let him. But then we need, look what it says. Look again in verse 1, it says, likewise with the same mind, he that hath suffered in the flesh cease from him. How do we do that? First of all, we look to him. And then we try to get his mind and what he's thinking. Our directions, here's the thing about it. What we think determines what we do. You say, how do you know that? Well, from about the age of 5 to about the age of 15, you know why I never tried anything? It never come to my mind. The reason a boy doesn't do it is because he didn't think about it. And some of the things that I've done in my lifetime, it's a wonder that I'm here alive today. I'll give you one illustration. That island where the Memorial Bridge has got one of its feet used to be a private island. And we got this boat. And I'm not going to tell you how we got it. It's an old flat bottom wood boat. But we got this boat. There's about 6 or 8 of us. And 5 of them got in the boat, went over, and I wanted to go over with them, so I got me a log. That river's quite swift. Would you believe I made it to the island? But that was really, really, really stupid. But why did I do it? I thought about it. The way what we think, and here's the thing, and Satan knows that if he can get something on our minds and get our minds off of our captain, then he's got us where he wants us. Because here's the thing about it. You say salvation's of the heart. True, I don't argue that point. But the battle's in the mind. How many times, parents, how many times have you laid awake at night getting your kids out of trouble they didn't even know they were in? In your mind. It said, here's the thing about it. It says, let this mind be in you which was also in Christ Jesus. And then he said it again in Philippians, he said, finally, my brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, if there be any praise, think on these things. You know, now, I'm not multitasked. I can only do one thing at one time. Now, my wife's a little bit better at that than I am. But I found out if I when I sat down, I don't know if y'all have this problem, but when I sat down to have my devotions, my little imp gets up on my shoulders and starts telling me what all I got to do that day. Does anybody else have a problem like it? So you think on that. But see, here's the thing about it. I need to keep, and I have to say, Lord, I need help here. Because if I don't, I am not going to get in. Now, I'm going to go ahead and read, but I am not going to get anything out of what you're trying to tell me. It ain't going to happen. Be honest with yourself. You can say, well, I read my devotions today. Did you read them? No, you just glanced over them because you was too busy listening to that fellow that's talking to you. You say, how do you know? Look at me. I'm made out of the same stuff you are. See, here's the thing about it. We must stay armed. And we do that by right thinking and having a right. And then we need to stay aimed. God saved us for a reason. He said, hey, look, I said this the last time. The best thing he'd have done for me on January the 31st, 1971 is if he'd have took me that night and took me straight to heaven. That would have been the best for me. But he had a plan for me. He had a purpose for me. Until he takes me home, there's still a purpose. I appreciate Brother Larry. Larry's older than I am. And he didn't retire. He just refired, and he keeps on going. He's like that Energized Bunny. He just keeps going and going and going. And I appreciate that. But here's the thing. We need to stay aimed. God saved us. We need to keep our focus on what's going on in our lives. See, here's the thing. Paul said this. He kept one thing on. He said, I've fought a good fight. I've finished my course. And he said, and I've kept the faith. He stayed on course his whole. Once Jesus saved him on the Damascus road, Paul never lost sight of what God wanted him to do. God's got a purpose for every one of us in this room. You say, but I'm not a Paul. Hey, Paul wasn't a Paul until he got saved on the Damascus. Look, here's the thing about it that I'm learning. Even the great men of the Scriptures, they were just ordinary people till an extraordinary God walked into their lives. Okay, now then, see, here's the thing about it. Look at verse 2. But he no longer lives. He no longer should live after the rest of his time in the flesh to the lust of men. We love pleasure. We all do. I don't know. To me, I look at people and they manage their time so well. And it frustrates me that I've wasted so much of mine. I'm 75 years old, and I look back over my life and time that I've wasted. In time's the only commodity that we have that we can spend wisely. But see, here's the thing about it. It says that he should no longer live the rest of his life in the flesh to the lust of men. See, we like to be pleasure. Hey, we waste our lives for things that will not pass this lifetime. We're either going after a job or we're going after something we like to do. Now look, there's nothing wrong with doing things, but we need to keep things in perspective. You know, we were camping. We used to camp maybe twice a year, once a year at Chester Frost. And I'm not jumping on fishing. I want you to understand that. But when we drove by there, they were having a bass tournament there, and they had to be $5 or $6 million worth of boats and trucks for pleasure. Man, how God, Larry, how you could use that down in Honduras. Huh? You understand where I'm coming? Where's our priorities at? But see, here's the thing about it. We waste our time. See, in the Army, they taught us, the first thing they did after they gave me my clothes and I was in basic training, the first item they issued to me once I got to basic training was an M1 Gran rifle. And you know what they did? For weeks, they taught me all about that rifle. I knew how to take it down. I knew how to put it together. I knew how to clean it. I knew all about it. And then they took us out to a range, and they had aiming stakes. Didn't give me no bullets. What they would do, they put a guy up at the aiming stake, and I'd aim at that aiming stake, and then I'd say, now, and I'd tell him where to put that, and he'd show me where I shot. No bullets. And then they took us out on the KD range. 100 yards, 200 yards, 300 yards, 500 yards. You know? But they taught me how that weapon functioned. And see, here's the thing about it. It's a waste of time for God to give it that. But here's the thing about it. We have a worthy target. If our sights are set, you know, you can have a rifle, but if your sights are bent just a little bit, you're not going to hit what you shoot at. What's it worth? Look, here's the thing about it. Being back in verse 2, it says that he no longer should live after the rest of his life in the flesh to the lust of men, but to the will of God. Now, what I should be shooting at in my life is not my pleasures, but I need to be finding out what the will of God is for Charlie. It's none of my business what the will of God. You know, it's funny. It's funny how everybody knows what. well, everybody knows what God's will is for you, but they can't figure out what it's for them. You know, man, you ought to be doing this, and you ought to be doing that. And, well, if God told you somebody ought to be doing it, why ain't you doing this and that? And I'm just using that as I'm not shooting at you, but I've been guilty of the same thing. But see, here's it. God, in Romans chapter 12, verse 2, it tells us that God's will is perfect. It's perfect. That means there's no blemishes to it. If I find the will of God and get in it, I'm in the perfect will of God. No matter what happens, I'm in God's will and I'm doing His pleasure for my life. That's what we need to be shooting at. That's what we need to be aiming for. Now, I want y'all to understand, I'm not always successful doing that. Because I like pleasure. See, here's the thing about it. Things are okay. But and you don't have to but if they can just misdirect you just a little bit, you're missing the mark. It's like, again, if your sights are bent just a little bit, and you shoot at something, you're not going to hit it. It ain't going to happen. Ask Pastor Mark. He'll tell you. I'd say he's missed a few deer because his sights weren't right. But I guarantee you, he tries to make sure that they're correct before he ever goes in the woods. Am I speaking the truth? Why do you think he needed another bale to shoot at? He wanted to. See, here's the thing. I know how to shoot a gun, but I guarantee you I can't shoot it as well as he does. You know why? I don't practice like he does. Here's the thing about it. Look what the psalmist says in verse 10 of Psalm 143. Teach me to do thy will, for thou art my God. Thy spirit is good. Lead me in the land of rightness. Now then, we not only need to stay armed and aim right, we need to stay adamant about it. Look. We need to draw a line in the sand and say, okay, I'm not moving. You say, well, that's not Christian. Paul drew a line in the sand. And he said, I'm not going to move. I believe it. See, when God saves you, He doesn't change you. He uses your personality. There's people that Chris can approach that will never, ever, ever listen to me. Never. Why? They like your personality. They don't like mine. And I like to be liked. And I'll kind of bend to get you to like me. And we're all that way. But here we need to be, look, here's the thing about it. In this we need to be adamant about it. We need to remember that. It says right here, he said in Psalm 62, it says, He only is my rock and my salvation. He's my defense, and I shall not be greatly moved. He's my defense. He's it. He's everything. He said, avoid past associations. When I got saved and I let everybody know that I got saved and I started going to church, I didn't really have to quit going around. I did quit going around a lot of places I didn't go. I'll be honest about that. But I want to hit something right here right quick. I believe in separation, but I am against isolation. You need to separate yourself from the sin of the sinner. I don't need to go the places that they go. I don't need to belly up to the places they belly up. I need to walk a straight and narrow line in my life and make sure that they see that. No, I don't need to hold it up in front of it. But if I do it on a consistent basis every day, see, I don't mean that I want to avoid them and not talk to them. I want to be kind to them. I want to take every opportunity that I can present Christ to them every time. The Lord, look for opportunities to witness to them. I don't want to isolate them. I want them to know that Jesus Christ can do the same thing for them that He's done for me. I have no regrets. But see, we need, for it says in verse 3, for in times past our lives may suffice us to have wrought the will of the Gentiles. When we walked, now listen, here's where we walked. Lasciviousness, lust, excess of wine, revelings, banquets, and abominable idolatries. Been to all them places. I'm not bragging on that. When I got saved, I didn't give up nothing. I didn't have nothing to give up. He took me out of the muck and the mire of this world and established my goings. That's why I'm thankful. That's why I look to him. That's why now I fail, but that's the reason I try to stay look at it. Here's the thing, and see, here's the thing about it. He said, look in Galatians chapter 5, it says, you did run well. Who hindered? See, there's somebody out there that can hinder you. He said, you did run well. Who hindered you that you should not obey the truth? Good illustration. One apple that's bad in a bag of apples will do what? Now then, I'm the good apple and you put me in a bag of bad apples, what's going to happen to me? The bad apples are going to they're going to run me just like they are. But, you know, we buy potatoes. Sometimes we'll eat them all up and sometimes we don't. We go through the basement and I said, man, there's something stinking down here. And come to find out it's 2 or 3 rotten potatoes. They sure are foul. And we need to realize that it's people can misdirect us in the direction that we, and it's not their fault. They just don't know no better. I'm not to change, they're not to change me, I'm to try to change them. And so if I run with them, I'm going to start picking up their habits, I'm going to start picking up their ways. And again, I want you to understand, if I have opportunity to be with them, I'm going to be with them. If I can go out and have a meal with them, I'm going to go with them. But I'm not going to run with them day in and day out and week in and week out. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to endanger myself. I'm that weak. I admit that. But here's the thing about it. We need to stay agreeable. Look at, we see, here, how do we do that? It says, and Jesus increased in Luke 5:52, he said, increased with wisdom and stature and favor with God and man. I told y'all a while ago, Chris, I like to be liked. I enjoy being with people. And I like to run my mouth, and sometimes I run it too much, and I get myself in trouble. And while I'm here, if I ever offend you with something I say, that's not my intent. And if you'll pull me up right then, I promise you from the bottom of my heart, I'll apologize. But I got one-liners. I like to use them, but I don't want to offend nobody. And see, here's the thing. We must have heavenly communication. Look at verse 7. He said, but the end of all things is at hand. Be ye therefore sober and watch unto prayer. I'm to pray on a daily basis. Every morning, you say, I get up, now I'm not bragging on myself, every morning I get up either at 4 o'clock or 5:30. On the weekends it's 5:30, on the days I work I get up at 4. You say, why do you do that? I want to leave my wife in the bed, I want to be by myself, and the only other thing there is my dog is sitting in the chair with me, and we have our devotions every morning. Why do you do that, Charlie? So that I can start my day off fresh with communication with him. I'm not bragging on myself. You say, well, you get into a rut. I'd rather be in that rut than any other rut that I know. I ought to make it a habit. Now, I'm not saying that you need to get up when I get up, but you need to find you the time that you're, and you say, well, I wait to have mine at night. When I sit down after 6 o'clock and start reading, the first thing I do is I take a nap. So I have mine while I'm fresh, where he can speak to me. Okay, now I need to have that communication. Household charity. You know, the thing that I love that I'm learning about church, here's the thing about it. He said, and look here in verse, look at verse 8. Above all things, have fervent charity among yourselves, for charity covered a multitude of sins. Use hospitality one another without grudging. And as every man hath received the gift, even so minister the same one to another as good stewards of the manifold grace of God. The only reason that you and I are here is because one day we experienced the grace of God. There's no big me's and little you's. I'm going to use Roy. Roy accomplished a lot in life. He worked his way up to a labor where he worked himself into the government of the city up in Jasper. You say, well, it's just a little bit down. Hey, look, he runs with a crowd that I wouldn't even fit nowhere in. He runs with lawyers, sheriff. I mean, you know, I know who my sheriff is. I know enough to speak to him. But you know, for 5 years, Roy and I met every Monday night and visited. You think, well, y'all went and visited. Every Monday night, he was late coming home every Monday night too, wasn't he, Carolyn? You know why? I'm going to confess. Once we got through visiting, we sit out here in the parking lot and we talked. And we talked on the same level. No big eye. Social standing didn't mean nothing as brothers in Christ. That's what I love about the church. You know, I've accomplished more than some, but that doesn't give me a right to brag because I am what I am by the grace of God. Here's at the household of children. He said, be ye kind one to another. I know this is a children's verse. Tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as God, for Christ's sake, has forgiven to us. Humble cooperation. I want to hit this right quick. I got 1 minute. We need to cooperate. I have a job to do in this church. You have a job to do, and we need to find that. I'm going to use another military illustration. When I was in the service, I was a armor crewman. There was 4 of us. Tank commander, gunner, driver, loader. You could go from an E6 all the way on down to an E1. Master sergeant down to a buck private on the ranks in there. And the tank commander would be the ranking man, the gunner would be the second rank, third rank would be the driver. And I started out as the loader. But you know what I found out? Now that piece of equipment in 1962 to 1965 was $250,000 worth of equipment. What it would cost today, I don't know. But I do know that if any one of those crewmen on that, even though I was the lowest ranking guy on the vehicle, if I did not do my job, it would not work. Isn't that something that a private can stop? $250,000 worth of equipment. I have no rank. I don't make no money. And yet I stop the operation. You know, here's the thing about it. It don't matter who we are here. We all have a position. And see, here's the thing about it. The devil does not want us to do the job that God's designed us to do. And anything that he can do to draw our attention away from the prime. Hey, making Jesus the main thing is the main thing. And keeping him there. See, here's the thing about it. If on that vehicle that I was on that tank, if I got my nose out of joint because one of them wouldn't let me see, and I'm going to be honest with you. If when we're going down the road, even though the hatch was called the loader's hatch because I was the lowest ranking fella, guess who got to ride inside and everybody else was sticking their head up at them? I did. Why? I couldn't tell the tank commander to come out of his hatch. I couldn't tell an E5 to come out of his hatch, and the driver wasn't going about to let me drive. See, here's the thing about it, but I had to cooperate for that to operate. And that's the same way here. We've all got a place. We all need to all be in our place. If not, if God can, if the devil can use anything to disrupt any one of us, it throws everything out of kilter. Hey, and we need to avoid those perversions. I'm not saying they're bad, but they're things that get our attention and pull us off of the main thing. Father, we thank you for this time that you've given us. We ask, Lord, that you use it. Lord, help me to make an application to this in my life. And Lord, I thank you for your goodness and mercy. For Christ's sake, amen.